Okay, we're out south of Wichita today with a pretty good little demo feature here. This well over here is sitting on top of a Lansing anticline. It's only about 400 feet wide, 500 feet wide, but it's actually been pretty productive. It's made quite a bit of oil, still making 15 barrels a day. Back behind those trees over there, there's another well that's doing about as well. So this anticline comes across here, it cuts across that corner on a southeast to northwest trend, and then it goes all the way across the corner of this quarter over to another well that's over there behind those trees. But you can't see it right now. So basically we're kind of paying attention to this well right here, and I know from the seismic that we have an anticline, a Lansing, Kansas City anticline straight ahead of us. So we're going to see if our instrument will identify that reservoir for us. This is the new software that the engineer and I just rolled out. It's got a demo screen on it, so if I do a video like this and people want to see this thing actually work in real time, we can do that here. And we also built a lot of the math computations that I used to have to do manually on paper and with multiple different instruments. We now have the LabVIEW software doing it with the new code that we wrote. So it's a pretty nifty little program. It pumps out a lot more data than what you see here. So when I do a full-blown study, I'm getting a lot more data sets than just this gauge, which is basically determined by what these numbers are down at the bottom. But for the purpose of a demonstration, it actually works well. Also, I'm just going to do one row or one line of samples between here and those trees up there, because we should cross over that anticline. Normally, if I was doing a full-blown study, I would do a crosshatch pattern where I run rows about every 200 feet apart. I stop about every 200 feet. So you end up with a grid pattern of samples, and it gives you a lot better definition as to the reservoir size and strength that you're looking for. Obviously, for demonstration purposes, I can't do crosshatch patterns, or I would get nothing done but doing demos all day long. It takes some time because at every sample point I do about a 2-minute scan. But this is a good opportunity for you all to see this thing work. This is not a structural tool. This is showing us where the thickest oil column exists at depth underneath the truck or underneath the sensor pack. And the sensor pack is constantly, when we start the scan, it's feeding data to the LabVIEW software. A lot of calculations are being done, and basically it spits out that number down at the bottom, which is amazingly accurate. When you can go out in a field in a truck like this and isolate an oil reservoir this easily, I don't know of another instrument out there that can do that. So we'll start our first scan here. Again, we're running 2-minute scans, and I do have an alarm that I can set to go off here, and I'm going to set it to go off if we hit anything that's in the medium with the moderate range. It's going to be this blue arrow. So we'll set that at about at a 145. The red arrow will move up as the numbers down at the bottom increase. Right now we're not getting much of a response at all, which I would expect that because we're still back east off of the top of that anticline. 60 seconds to go on the scan. We're sitting at there's a 127. Which equates to a weak hydrocarbon indication. Certainly not barren, but not a reading that I would drill on. Kind of what I would expect to find on the edge of that anticline. We definitely should see something better than that between here and those trees, because these wells are still making some pretty decent oil, so there should be quite a bit of residual oil left in that reservoir. Started developing this technology back in 2008. When I started, I had multiple pieces of equipment, multiple sensors that we used all together, and as things have grown over the years, we now have one sensor pack that gathers all the data, and this LabVIEW program processes that data. So we're going to end up at a 127, which is the red arrow, which is a weak hydrocarbon indication. So we'll drive up here maybe another 100 feet. And we should be a lot closer now to that anticline, because again it comes across, cuts right across this corner here, and then goes off that way. So we'll see what we get here. If we pick it up, once we get on the other side of those trees, according to 3D, it drops off. So the strongest part of the anticline is about between here, maybe a little bit farther ahead, and those trees. And there we go. We got a 197, which is actually in the strong range. Little alarm going off there, so we're on it. Since we already are, I'm not going to make y'all listen to that alarm all day long. I'm going to silence the alarm, and we'll go ahead and let the scan finish out. Probably won't beat a 197. A 197 is pretty strong. Sometimes as it's processing data, we'll get some more updates before the scan ends, or we'll just get one big update and that's the result that we get. But a 197 is definitely going to bump up on us a little bit. 10 seconds to go. So we're going to end up, there's a 201. So that's actually a strong hydrocarbon reading. And so I'm just going to edge up maybe another 100 feet here. And so now we're literally right on trend with that well there. There's another well behind it, and then there's a well over there, so we should be right on top of it now. I would expect to see a reading, and there it is. See that thing spool up.
Hydrocarbon reservoir detected.
So we got a 185, which is again a strong reading. And I silenced the alarm. We still have 80 seconds to go. As we work our way toward those trees and go through that clearing, that little clearing there, we should come off of this anticline and see those numbers. Actually, we had a really strong spike there that reset the system, so we're definitely sitting on top of this anticline. We got a 308 now.
Hydrocarbon reservoir detected.
kind of going nuts here. We're in the honey hole for sure.
Hydrocarbon reservoir detected.
And it makes sense because I haven't looked at the 3D in a while, but it definitely just cuts across this quarter here, this corner of this quarter. And that well is right on trend with where we're sitting, so not surprised we got this kind of a reading here. So 340 is a very respectable reading, very strong reading. I'd drill on that if I had a cluster of them. Like I said, I would never drill a well on one row of samples. There's always rogue samples. Some are abnormally high, some abnormally low. When you have a crosshatch pattern, though, an entire grid of samples, you can kind of smooth all those in. You can pick out what you feel is a sample that's out of place, probably doesn't belong in the set, and you basically just, like you do with 3D, you smooth and refine your results. So definitely got a big strong reading here of a 349. It looks like 350 right at the end of the scan. So we'll move up another 100 feet and we'll be getting kind of on the west side of this anticline now. I'd still expect to get a strong reading here, but we may start to see it drop off now. And it should definitely drop off on us once we get on the other side of these trees. I assure you guys, I'm not pressing any buttons with my feet or my fingers, and I don't have any kind of weird stuff that makes this thing act the way that it does. It simply is working, and that's why we're going to take some prospective customers out. They don't even need to tell me where they want to go before we go. If you know where a well's at and you've got enough geological control around it or information that you know what we should see, you don't need to tell me until we get in the truck where we're going, and that way you'll know nothing's rehearsed. And we're still getting that's actually a moderate reading. So we're kind of off. If we don't get any higher than this, we definitely left the best part of this anticline behind us already. So we got 30 seconds to go. We'll see if that kicks up on us any. There that well is there. So we're actually on the western side of the anticline now, and it's not very wide. Like I said, it's maybe 400 or 500 feet at best. About 10 seconds to go. It looks like we're going to end at a 145, which is right at the beginning of the moderate range. Now we'll pull up to this clearing here. And this is where we really kind of start to see this structure fall off. We'll catch one right here before we go through that clearing, little opening there. Probably still going to get some kind of an anomalous reading here, but it definitely shouldn't be a 330 like we had when we were on top of that feature. It's an amazing instrument to be able to go out and do this. You can't go out and shoot a quarter section with 3D in an afternoon And even if you can, it doesn't mean it's got oil in it. Not every structural high's got a hydrocarbon in it. I can do a quarter to a half section in a day with this tool and have a pretty good idea before I even go home whether I've got anything or not. So right now we're up to a 128, which is in the weak range. We'll see if we beat that or not with 50 seconds to go. The well is way back, well, not way back, but about, well, it'd be right at 330 back to the east of us. So we have to be on the very western edge of that skinny little anticline. And if we end up here, we're going to be in a weak hydrocarbon indication. So you can see how narrow but yet prolific that feature was. We had two really strong readings basically right in line with that producer, and that's what it's sitting on. And then a moderately high reading after that. So it's confirming this is not a real wide feature. Okay, we're going to end it up at a 128, which is a weak hydrocarbon. So now we'll go through this clearing here. And when we get on the other side of this, in a 3D sense anyway, we're going to be falling way off structurally. So we're leaving those trees behind us and that well behind us, and we should see some pretty dead readings now. So we'll see what we got here. Got about 80 seconds to go. Typically when you get into a good reservoir, kind of like what we saw back there, this thing will start cranking up pretty quick and you can tell you're in something. Those numbers will start spooling up and trip that alarm, and you know you're in something. Right now we pretty much know we're out of something because it's been sitting there at that 91 and we're practically done with our scan. So we've definitely had a very, very marked change as we've crossed over that last 600 or 800 feet of survey area. We had about like I said, about a 400-foot wide area in there that was a sweet spot, and that's exactly where that well is. So I think it's a pretty good testimonial that this thing's working. "13 seconds, 12, 11, and it's not going to budge off of a 91, which is a barren reading. So we'll go up here, catch one more, which again up here should be off in a dead area. In fact, I think there was a dry hole right in here at one time. I'm going to turn around and face back toward that clearing and that producer. We'll take, so now we're way back to the west of that producer and that clearing there. We'll catch one more reading here. It's a long video, I apologize for that, but obviously to demonstrate this with any kind of credibility, it just takes time, especially when you're taking readings for 2 minutes at every sample point. I typically take around 150 sample points off of every quarter section study, and a lot of times I take more than that. If I see myself getting into something, I tighten that spacing up, so that may even be higher than that. Well, 150 sample points at 2 minutes per sample, that's 300 minutes, so it eats up a pretty good day just getting the field acquisition part of this done. But this is a great opportunity to demo this, because you've just got this one little anticline passing through here, and you're either on it or you're not, and the instrument definitely shows that. So we haven't moved from 100, which is barren. The red needle's just hanging down there dead. It's a long way from that 330 we got up there on trend with that producer. So with about 15 seconds to go, I'm not expecting anything to happen. If you're interested in possibly doing a ride along with us, get a hold of me or Bonnie Kennedy, and we'll see what we can work out. And that is it. Everybody have a great day, and good luck out there in the oil fields.